Hello， 欢迎再次收听建筑家 Podcast， 我是博翔。2022的8月是一个令人振奋的月份，除了疫情逐渐趋缓迈向解封之外，在台北一栋令人惊艳的建筑，在经过10年的建设之后，也正式开幕了。这栋建筑就是被大家俗称皮蛋豆腐的台北表演艺术中心。2008年，台北表演艺术中心的建筑设计经过国际竞图比选，由 Rem Koolhaas 创立的大都会建筑师事务所及姚仁喜所带领的大元联合建筑师事务所团队胜出。工程至2012年动工，中间经历了承包商倒闭停工、重新检讨工程进度及图面、分标发包等重重难关，终于在2021年完工。今年3月开始试营运，并且在8月正式开幕了。本期节目邀请大家跟着我一起去台北表演艺术中心，与建筑师 Rem Koolhaas 及 David Gianotten 面对面对话。走出捷运站，经过配合北艺建筑风格重新打造的地下道，窜出地面，映入眼帘的是悬浮在天际的巨大映射球体，而与实体球体对比的是一座由曲面玻璃组成的透明立方体。这样的组合让人联想到台湾的经典卤味、竹签上的贡丸，还有旁边一大块的米血糕。
我们可以做哦，米血停不了。
台北表演艺术中心的基地就位在台北捷运剑潭站旁，多年前士林夜市就在这里。路边摊、小吃铺林立的生猛活力，启发了库哈斯对这栋建筑和城市对话的想象。So in the beginning, I would like to ask Koolhaas about how is the relationship between Taipei Performing Arts Center and Taipei urban context. I think it's very interesting because the city night market is a very environment. And how is this building integrate into the environment?
You could really say that this is a building that directly came out of the context. We visited together and we were actually immediately inspired almost in terms of this particular design because we realized that it's an exceptionally interesting, energetic part of the city.
Yes.
And obviously we wanted to keep it that way, and we wanted to create a feature there which totally exploits that kind of energy. Mm-hmm. And that is the reason that we kept the plaza completely open and kept the building accessible from every side.
Yes.
And it's actually very exciting to see how people come from every side to use it. And I would say that in every sense, we try to both maintain and enhance that kind of environment. Mm-hmm. And we were also impressed by the Taipei government for actually choosing that site, because it's not a very typical site to put a theater situation. Mm-hmm. And so the site itself gave us a kind of awareness that there's an appetite in Taipei to experiment.
Rem Koolhaas 是 OMA 大都会建筑师事务所的创始人，1975年与伙伴们共同创立了 OMA， 在2000年拿下了建筑界的最高荣誉普利兹克建筑奖。现在同时担任哈佛大学教授，与学生共同研究城市议题，推出多本著作。2014年，库哈斯也担任第14届威尼斯建筑双年展的总监，策划名为 Fundamental 本源的展览，影响全球及各地域的建筑思潮。他在1994年出访台北时，曾以难以承受的乐园描绘他所见的城市。当他提案前重访台北，又以士林夜市室内的鸳鸯火锅的大杂烩启发他的设计。为了让建筑成为城市的一部分，特意将建筑量体抬离地面，四面八方的人都可以自在地使用跟进入建筑。而每个剧场都有各自的入口及动线，而且除了剧场内部展演空间外，大部分的空间都是开放给大众的。建筑2楼也是开放的空间，可以举办论坛等活动，同时能眺望城市街景和自然山景。库哈斯希望保留最多的弹性，并且让人在建筑内也可以感受融入自然跟城市之中。 OMA 为了让市民更能体验这座剧院，设计了独特的公共回路 Public Loop。这条参访动线是穿训在观众跟开放给一般大众的路线上，同时能感受看表演跟剧场工作者的动线，这种互相交叠的路线形成了很有意思的空间状态。
It's true that we are aware that buildings are enormous investments, and particularly public buildings are of course kind of financed by the kind of public sector. And that for that reason, we find it important that it's not only the audience or not only the visitors to a concert hall that can benefit,
Yes.
but that there's also benefit from everybody who's not inside or everybody who's not paying tickets. And so it's a conscious way also to mitigate and to kind of reduce the sense of elitism in particular buildings and to create a kind of sense that the building actually belongs to everybody.
北艺中心的另外一位重要灵魂人物是 David Gianotten。David 是 OMA 管理合伙人及建筑师，领导 OMA 环球事务所的总体架构、财政以及业务策划等拓展，同时带领全球多个建筑项目的设计和建设，是执行台北表演艺术中心项目的重要主力。David 也特别提到，有别于一般传统剧场，观众只能看到光鲜亮丽的幕前表演，北艺中心特别将这些平时被隐藏的后台空间给展现出来。公共回路将带领参观者穿过排练室、剧场基础设施和制作空间，更可以透过球剧场上方的风景窗，一窥剧场里的表演。希望借由这样的设计，让大家了解制作一出剧场表演幕后所需要投入的人力及资源。
And on top of that, what is really important is that a lot of people go to the theater to see the play,
Yes.
but don't see what is needed to create that play. And the public loop actually goes around the whole building and shows the technical aspects of theater making, shows the rehearsal spaces, shows the moments of relaxation of the actors,
Yes.
shows kind of the dressing rooms and all the technician spaces, so that people understand that theater making is actually hard work. It's not just a performance of 60 to 120 minutes, but that is months of work in there, from the writing to the practicing to the performance.
Yes.
And in that public loop also exposes that more, so that people don't see it as only something you can consume, but also see it as a career possibility or as a creative environment. And we think that is also important for a project like this, to show that there is a very good career in culture, that culture is kind of also very much invested in society.
Yeah.
And part of the economy.
Yeah, so make it very inclusive for all people who can actually join the building. No matter they have they can afford the ticket or not, they can see what is happening inside.
谈到这座建筑物，不得不提它独特的建筑外观。近年一些建筑作品为了标新立异，刻意雕塑特殊的外观造型。而 Rem Koolhaas 表示，北艺中心的3座剧场的建筑类型 typology 忠实呈现了各自的内部机能。球剧场是球体，蓝盒子是长方形，大剧院是不对称盒形。3座剧场再嵌入中央的方形量体，形成很有趣且富含玩味的外观。台北表演艺术中心以实验性的手法设计剧院的内部布局，从而自然地创造出了一个地标。
Well, what is very kind of nice in this case, because there have been kind of very long period just before where everyone was trying to kind of sculpt an exceptional building.
Yes.
But here we took exactly all the ingredients of the building, because the sphere is a round theater. The box is a kind of box,
Yes.
and the wedge is a kind of really wedge. We took everything that was necessary and all the topologies and kind of simply arranged them in a particular way.
Yes.
And project and presented that as the design, but in an interesting way. We worked with all the givens, and our only contribution is actually combining the givens in a new way.
传统剧场的后台、大厅等活动空间通常是被遮蔽起来，无法从外观看的。而台北表演艺术中心的建筑外观，藉由通透表达活动、实体表达剧场的观众坐席空间，来清楚区别使用行为。更进一步 OMA 也实验性的尝试在各剧场的动线和休息空间中开窗，引入阳光，让观众短暂休息吃喝点东西时，透过窗户看到蓝天绿意。
Yeah, and for the envelope itself, what we did is we created transparency there which in places which you normally don't see, like the back of house,
exactly.
like the lobby spaces. Normally you don't see them on the outside of a theater. And we kept the places where you sit opaque. But even we brought daylight in these spaces. For example, the Grand Theater can get daylight in. So we try to create an environment of where all the aspects of the theater making is also seen on the outside through the transparency. And that when people are sitting and looking at the stage, that is kind of protected in the opaque volume. So there's also very clear contrast between transparency, openness in the skin, where the activities are, versus the places where people sit and look at the space.
临抠且通透的中央立方体也成为城市的延伸，更是城市的大客厅。欢迎大家随时进到剧场里走走，藉由楼梯、坡道、电扶梯等巧妙地引导大家走上位在2楼的太阳厅。这里不仅可以看到士林夜市、平市捷运站、圆山饭店，四周的翠绿山景也一览无遗。到这一层才会看到各剧场的入口。这样的设计也是希望不要让这栋建筑变成精英专属的，而是开放给市民的，每个人都能享受使用。一般大众就算不看戏，也能进入剧院。
But really the building is meant as an extension of the city. Or almost an intensification of the city.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting. You enter, you go up, and then you meet in a kind of urban living room. And only from there do you go to the different destination.
Yes, because I went to this site on daytime and on nighttime, and it's very obvious that the color is a very important element that is inside the building. For example, the practice room is pink and the public look is orange, and it can be observed very clearly on the outside, especially on the nighttime when you walk in the city night market. You can just see they might have some practicing happening right now. Exactly.
OMA 赋予各空间和动线不同的颜色，例如排练室的粉红色、公共汇路的橘红色、行政办公室天顶的绿色，以及3座剧场不同深浅的蓝色。这些颜色从透明立方体中隐隐透出，拉近了这栋建筑与城市的距离，让大家随时都能观察到台北表演艺术中心里正在发生的事情。北艺中心的建筑形式与设计手法也引发我的好奇心。它似乎与 OMA 早期在1980-90年代末未能实现的竞图作品，像是法国国家图书馆竞图及卡尔斯鲁厄艺术与媒体中心竞图更为相像。
We change all the time because the context changes, the political situation changes, the economy changes. So, if you're kind of involved in architecture, you feel that there is not a given identity, but there is kind of a constant adjustment, a constant exploration of new potentials, a constant exploration of new territories, of new culture. But of course there is also kind of something given or fundamental where you remain interested in, and I would say that the main interest is kind of really to create an architecture that is kind of really inviting participation from the public in more than a passive way. I think that is the key kind of thing that informs all of those kind of projects.
Koolhaas 特别谈到，时代潮流、政经环境持续的改变着，建筑产业中也没有标准答案，因此 OMA 不断的调整和寻找新的可能性，开拓新的领域，打造新的文化。当然，也有一些理念是不变的，例如设计属于大众的建筑物。这也是这几件作品的共通点。
And I also think that designing cultural spaces means you're constantly exploring new things, but you're also using ingredients that are already
classical.
Asian, classical, or also of recent times. So there are similarities in every theater. There's a stage. In every theater there's a seating. Most theaters there's a balcony. But at the same time you can try to evolve that into the next level. And for us, that is also kind of a way how we deal with projects. So a cultural project constantly is on its own, but it's also part of a trajectory, also part of a history.
Yeah, part of a tradition.
Tradition.
David 补充说道，打造一座崭新的文化场域，不仅是使用经典元素创作，更是与亚洲文化跟现今世代的对话。除了剧场必备的舞台、座位区、包厢，我们更想推升这些元素到一个新的境界，而这正是欧玛在每个专案中都秉持的精神。因此，每个作品都是独立存在着，但也是欧玛创作的轨迹、历史和传统的一部分。北艺中心有2个世界第一，第一是球形造型的球剧场 Global Playhouse， 第二是最多能容纳2300人的超级大剧场 Super Theater。超级大剧场是由大剧院和蓝盒子组合而成，这个巨大的空间有着工业建筑的特性，可以容纳各式非常规的大型表演制作，激发着剧场创作者的无穷想象力。建筑师虽然可以创造空间，但真正赋予空间灵魂的是这些剧场创作者们。Koolhaas 和 David 都非常期待看见台湾的剧场表演者们将如何使用这座超级大剧场。
It's really very important that you emphasize that, yeah, because that is for us the key of what we try to do.
Yeah, by putting the things that were briefed together in a specific way, we created new possibilities that were not briefed, and even possibilities that we cannot imagine.
Yes.
But we hope the theater makers can imagine. When we came to Taipei first, we encountered creative industries and theater makers that are very experimental, looking for new ways of dealing with performance, and also an audience that is kind of from young to old in all the performances. Not like the elderly people go to this, the younger people go to that, which is in the Western world very often the case. But here everything is mixed. A lot of people go to experimental performances. And for us, that was really interesting energy for theater making. The super theater is, of course, a space of combining the MT and the GT together that creates possibilities that normally theater makers only have somewhere outside the city in an industrial site with an enormous size. Yes. And here, although we try to be extremely compact, we created a space that is very large and that is conditioned as a theater. So they can use it to the maximum benefit.
Yes.
And that to us is very interesting to see how they're going to do it. And you already hear that people are writing specifically plays for that setting.
Oh, really?
And we're very curious to see what comes out of that because we are architects, we can think of the space, but how to program and how to use that space obviously is up for the theater makers. And we think that there is a good feeding ground in Taiwan for the experimental theater, for theater makers that are also willing to experiment, and also kind of an audience that comes and looks at it.
这座实验性的剧场建筑从国际竞图到工程完工总共经历了14年。Koolhaas 跟 David 两人也是积极的参与每个阶段，从一开始的竞图、基本设计、细部设计、建筑工程、试营运到开幕的今日。建筑师最重要的工作就是专业合作，不仅是跟政府，也是跟工程师、营造商、使用者等一起来努力，保持沟通与交流，这样才能把理念传达给每一个人。在不断的沟通交流中，设计也可以持续的改良，这也是OMA乐见的。
We did the first site visit together, and obviously we went through all the different stages of the project. The design stages, the first part of the construction, then after the bankruptcy of the contractor, the second part, and also now the tuning of the building towards kind of the operation and the new possibilities. What is really exciting is that kind of we worked together with people in the government, with people in the engineering teams, in the architectural teams, that all kind of understood the ambition of the project and constantly, no matter what happened in the process, kind of were aimed to get to the point where we are today.
Yes.
And that also kind of means that that design constantly kept evolving and constantly kept adjusting, which is a virtue to us that you can work on something longer and adjust and fine tune.
Right.
Kind of course, it's a very long time. Some people say that for new and experimental, exciting projects, you need a lot of time.
Right.
There are also places in the world where maybe have taken less time, but at least the process, also kind of discussing it constantly, going through the bureaucracy of the approvals,
Right.
Talking to contractors and seeing what kind of possibilities they had to help us achieve what we wanted to achieve, definitely enriched the experience and I think is also very visible in the end result.
为了达到理想的设计成果， Koolhaas 认为除了合作之外，建筑师实际投入专案也是非常重要的。两位建筑师在过程中不断的造访台湾，亲自与政府各方合作单位持续的工作。同时 OMA 驻地台湾的林家禄建筑师也是重要工程。近年因为受到新冠疫情的影响，无法亲自到达现场，在开放商务旅游之后， Koolhaas 跟 David 也马上飞抵台湾，拉起袖子投入专案工作，希望让工程可以最佳的收尾。
I think collaboration, David spoke about it, but also presence. And kind of each of us were here, David every 6 weeks and I every 2 months,
Right.
for 10 years. And in the beginning even kind of more often because David was based in Hong Kong.
Right.
And so it's kind of really that personal interaction with the bureaucracy, with the Taiwanese, basically with the Taiwanese architects, with our Taiwanese collaborator, Xiaoyu, that made it possible. And so that is why we were kind of really nervous in the past 2 years because we had to stop that kind of personal involvement.
Right.
And because of COVID. And so that is why now we are trying to kind of accelerate the kind of interaction again because we are obviously in a kind of learning curve.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. So basically the COVID, the pandemic actually impacts a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, COVID impacts the world a lot and obviously also how people look at things a lot.
Exactly.
But kind of I think mostly was that investment that we had in the first 10 years of the project. We could not continue until the end, although we did everything digitally, although we were through cameras in the building and stuff. To see the real result and to sit face to face with people to discuss possibilities is obviously more fruitful than through a screen. But now being here again, kind of we're very happy with what we see as the end result, and we're now fine-tuning and working together with the operation team to get the maximum out of it and to also look at some of the things that are criticized.
实验性和创新的背后肯定会受到质疑。台北表演艺术中心在今年3月开馆试营运后，即受到各方密切的关注。举凡建筑造型、动线、厕所、座椅设计等等，都成为大家议论的焦点。面对种种争议，Koolhaas表示，他乐见建筑被大众讨论，但也认为剧院建筑就像是一台大型的乐器，在完工后需要时间慢慢校正。希望大众可以给这栋建筑多一点时间，也期待大家可以多来北艺中心走走，尝试了解这栋建筑的设计理念和手法。
You often enjoy the work being discussed by the public, and do you know like there's a very funny nickname for the building as well? Yeah. How do you confront and respond to all the controversies?
Well, I think that if you do something which is kind of experimental and something which is ambitious, you always can raise controversies.
Right.
And so I think that I would love to discuss aspects of how the building works and what it is intended to do and whether it performs on that level, kind of rather than detailed issues like the furniture is damaged when it was stored. Yeah?
Right.
I think it's a bit of a pity that we discuss minor details that can be fixed and that will be fixed, kind of rather than the overall intentions of the building.
北艺中心就像是刚诞生的婴儿，设计者、经营者以及大众都会需要经过一段学习的历程。在开馆后，让大家一步步接近、触摸、学习与尝试，需要时间来展示它的可能性。对 David 来说，聆听正面和负面的反馈都是重要的，才能逐步的调整建筑，让它更好。同时 Koolhaas 跟 David 也在尝试与大众和媒体搭起沟通的桥梁， 希望能借由解释建筑和设计说明意图，来让大家可以更全面的了解这栋独特的剧院。
Now, I think controversy belongs to every project that has a lot of exposure. And we should not forget that a project like this, of such a magnitude, has exposure in the city, and everybody creates its anticipation around it. And then kind of when you go and are able to read the spaces and have a pleasant experience, then obviously your response to it is very positive. The moment that you don't fully understand it or you miss something, then you might feel some criticism. So that is a normal thing. A device like this or a building like this needs time for people to understand, needs time to show its possibilities, and therefore its full appreciation. And for an architect, it's also good to hear feedback, positive and negative, to able to tune the building, as we said, in a learning curve, but also to respond to it by explaining it, because that is something that we were not able to do yet. Through COVID, we were not able to do a public lecture before the opening. We're now here to do the public lecture while everybody has seen it. So explaining a building and explaining the intention also very often helps with people judging something, positive or negative. And that is something we are very committed to, and will stay committed to. We're also not gone. For an it's very often it's seen an architect project is you design it, it's finished, you're gone. But actually for us that's not. And we are very curious to see how it's going to work. We're very curious to help in solving issues. We're very curious in helping things forward. So we're gonna stay invested in this project because it's a very special thing.
每次看到一栋建筑完工成为城市的一部分，对欧玛来说都会有一种陌生感，是一种新的可能，一种惊喜感。北艺中心经历了前面这些建造的阶段，这些给他了一个特别的生命，相信他未来会受到这座城市居民的照顾，而欧玛也会持续致力于陪伴北艺中心生根茁壮。
And also be involved in kind of when society changes, what that does with the building. Kind of the building is static in its way, but it also needs to evolve with its future. So when you invest in that, that is a good thing.
走出台北表演艺术中心，回望这座独特的剧场建筑，或许可以用 embrace 拥抱来说明这栋建筑带给城市与大众的独特感受。北艺中心不仅拥抱城市、自然、在地文化，也拥抱大众、剧团、创意的种种可能性。Rem Koolhaas 跟 David Gianotten 将3座剧场悬浮于天际，以最小基地成就最大面积，尽可能的保留广场空间，并尝试与在地文化能量连接，同时打开传统剧场厚重的大门，重新想象后台、前台、坐席、包厢的可能性，拉近表演者与观众者间的距离，更打造了一座大众无时无刻都可以悠游进出的艺文大厅。听完本集节目，一起去台北表演艺术中心吧！相信不管是在大厅游走，或是买票进入剧场看戏，甚至踏上公共回路，你都会深深的被这栋建筑的独特魅力吸引。谢谢你的收听，并且听到了最后。本集节目的诞生要特别感谢欧玛大都会建筑师事务所 Rem Koolhaas David Gianotten Sylvia Chang 台北表演艺术中心行销部蔡中俊，赞助伙伴徐凯熙、精英建筑模型有限公司、丰宇影像有限公司、方瑜伽、李燕山，还有隐藏的伙伴们。脚本协助刘光宇、卢德珍、王敬坤，后制剪辑王博维，翻译协助钱家伟。当然还有收听的你。喜欢本集节目，别忘了在 Instagram 搜寻建筑家，其他收听管道还有 Apple Podcast、Spotify、YouTube 等各大收听平台。订阅节目并给予5星评价和留言。另外，我们也非常欢迎大家赞助建筑家，让我们可以继续创作。我们下次见，拜拜。